Metropolitan Community Television has been with us since the 90s in the city. But in the rural sector, community television is a recent phenomenon. Hello, my name is Azzopardi, and I'm speaking today with Mr. Russell Castley, Chairman of Bendigo Community Television.
Hello, Andrew.
And Wendy McKillop, Secretary of Bendigo Community Television.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello. And we're talking about community television. Russell, how do you see the recent federal government decision on digital television and datacasting and its effects in the community television sector?
I think that the decision that the government's handed down will probably help community television for a number of reasons. The main one being that they've put fairly tight restrictions on datacasters, and in the digital era, community television will be digitally broadcast through a datacaster. Now, I feel that because of the restrictions the government has put on the datacasters, that there'll be very few applicants for the datacasting licences, and I'm rather hoping that this will lead to additional spectrum being available for community television to broadcast on analogue as well as digital television.
Wendy, I understand that BCTV has been operating with an analogue format. Can you give us a brief rundown on the history of Bendigo Community Television?
Yes, certainly. I'll just refer to a few notes here to get the dates right. But back in '94, there's a group called the Central Victorian Community Television, which they got together to look at making programs, but they never actually applied for a licence. So in '95, Russell Castley and some others were approached to get a group together, and which we did in July 1995. And that was with the aim of applying for a licence for the broadcast of community television in the regional area. So that was applied for back in December '95, and we actually that was approved in June '96 to start with, effective from the 1st of July '96. We then applied to Bendigo Regional Institute of TAFE, the college there, for the use of their studio, we got the use of their studio there to make programs on a sort of limited agreement. And we also managed to get the use of the Kangaroo Flat railway station, which has been abandoned, or had been abandoned at that stage. The building's there for a studio and also as a transmitting area, because the idea was that put the transmitter on Mount Herbert, and the Kangaroo Flat railway station was in direct visual link, so that you could put a microwave link at the station to transmit the programs from the Mount Herbert antenna. So we had that, but of course the problem was to get the money to put in the transmitters and the antenna. So we applied for a lot of varying funding, and one of them was the Community Support Fund, which we put that in, and it took them 6 months to say that we hadn't got it.
And that's the state government.
That's right, yes. That was the one that was supposed to be for the community support, and there was supposed to be so many million involved there, which there wasn't any. We applied at various times to the Bendigo Council, and were rejected many times on that, but we found out there was a very good reason for that, in that certain councillors there were also trying to establish their own community station in opposition, but they didn't have the licence. We still held the licence, which had been extended several times over the years. Eventually, we did get hold of a loan of a transmitter that we could have use of gratis, on the condition that when we had the money, we could actually purchase one from these people. But we did have to buy our own antenna. Finally, we managed to get a loan, a bank overdraft, which was guaranteed by members of the committee and the BCTV, and that got us our antenna up on Mount Herbert. Unfortunately then, the Kangaroo Flat railway station was attacked by an arsonist and burnt down and completely destroyed, so we lost that, which put us a bit of a setback there, and there's still not a lot of money coming in as far as ongoing. However, despite all of that, in June 1999, we did get a test pattern on air. And the way we had to do this at this point was to actually drive up to the antenna site and put it where we had the transmitter and put in a tape. It was quite a rough trip up there.
Yeah, it sounds like the need for horseback, I would suggest.
Well, that was considered, yes. It really did a bit of damage to vehicles in the meantime, but this was why we had to have the microwave link from the railway station. And then, for some reason, which we found out later, of course, was because of all the advent of digital television, on the 30th of June we got a fax from the ABA not telling us they weren't renewing our licence and we were to get off air within a couple of days. So we really sort of lost that. They said that we weren't fulfilling our conditions, which was transmitting programs. Well, they never told us that we had to transmit programs in the first place. Then we did get a test pattern on, and we did have plans to get our programs on within a couple of weeks. So at the moment we have not got a transmitter. We had to send that back. We haven't got a licence. We've appealed for that one. We've still got the antenna up there, which is still sitting up there, and we've still got our committee and no money. But we have lodged an appeal to get the licence back.
Russell, what is the current situation regarding this appeal to the Australian Broadcasting Association in regards to the apparatus licence?
Well, initially we asked the Australian Broadcasting Authority to reconsider their decision. They refused to do that. We then asked them for a statement of reasons why we lost the licence. We had to wait for another month for those reasons to come through. And then we submitted an appeal to the Australian Communications Authority. Now, they had 3 months to consider the appeal, which was actually advantageous to us because we had additional information that we wanted to submit to them in that 3-month period. And what's happened now is that the Australian Communications Authority has written to the chairman of the Australian Broadcasting Authority, Professor David Flint, strongly urging him to return our licence to us for a short period of time to enable us, or to give us the opportunity to show whether or not we could have got on air broadcasting programs in accordance with the Act, which we believe we could do. The ABA took the view that because we weren't actually broadcasting programs on the 30th of June in 1999, that they wouldn't renew our licence. But bear in mind that we'd only been transmitting for 2 weeks then, and I don't think there's any television station in Australia, community, commercial, or ABC or SBS, that was broadcasting a test pattern for 2 weeks and then started broadcasting programs. So I think the ABA treated us very unfairly.
And obviously you do have programs that are
we've got
ready
programs.
to go.
We've got programs ready to go,
So
and the ABA knew that. We told them that we'd be on air with programs on the 17th of July, and this has been pointed out in the letter from the Australian Communications Authority to Professor Flint, chairman of the ABA.
Regional community television obviously has its own set of problems, due in part to the distances involved from transmitter site to the actual punters, I suppose. Can you paint us a snapshot of some of the obstacles and differences between metropolitan and rural community televisions, in your opinion?
Well, as I see it, in a regional area as big as Central Victoria, initially we would just be broadcasting into Bendigo. Our aim eventually is to broadcast to the whole of Central Victoria. In order to do that, we will need other translators, transmitters, around Central Victoria to be able to get the signal out to the whole of Central Victoria. That's transmitting analogue. When we move into the digital era, it will be slightly different. I think another problem we have in regional areas is lack of population, therefore we have a lack of money coming in. So one of the big problems with community television, or trying to broadcast community television in regional areas, is you're trying to do it on a shoestring budget, and that's a big problem.
Yes, so that people are not going to be as prepared to put in sponsorship dollars if they're not getting the viewing public, the number of viewing public, to justify that outlay on their part. So it becomes much more difficult then to generate an income as far as sponsors go. And like Russell was saying, you need more equipment in the rural area to just simply get that signal out than what you do in the city. In the city you only need one transmitter. I mean, here it was like having to go up the mountain all the time just to put in our tape. So you really need your microwave link. It's just a matter of logistics and money.
Right. Roughly what sort of costs of microwave links, just for that problem, of course, from the Kangaroo Flat?
At the moment we were transmitting with low power, a low power transmitter. We probably had the smallest transmitter of any television station in Australia. So the cost of that transmitter was around $30,000, and for a microwave link it would be about the same amount of money. And then if we had to set up other translators in other areas, which is where the additional cost comes in, because Melbourne too has a microwave link from Melbourne up to Mount Dandenong. But if we put in translators, we need other microwave links to these other translators in some instances. And you need the cost of those translators, so each one $30,000.
Plus the associated labourers involved.
That's right.
Whether it's gratis or...
And one of the other problems is the nature of the membership is more individual than groups. And so it's a matter of making programs, and it's more up to individuals to make programs rather than perhaps a larger group which could get together.
I see, because this is where the Metropolitan Community Television, their idea of having member groups, I gather.
So, yes. Whereas with us it is far more community-based and very much a local
membership-based,
membership-based,
individual
yes.
membership.
Because our viewing public is different for a start. I mean, we've got a lot of rural issues, a lot of isolated people. And actually this is one of the really big advantages with community television, is because the network has removed the community from the commercial television. I mean, we haven't got any really locally made programs.
So you're saying Prime, which is Channel 7 in Melbourne, and Win, which is 9 in Melbourne, do not produce programs within Central Victoria or Northern Victoria other than the news or general interest?
That's right, because the majority of their programs are bought on the network. So, I mean, there is scope actually for a lot of programs like sporting, community groups. I mean, things like the CWA, for instance, is actually quite a big influence. And there's local information, things like farming and sporting, yes, and other such, and cultural, just to get the access to the cultural groups and these things out to the people.
And I gather that Bendigo Community Television filmed the Bendigo Easter Fair a couple of years ago.
We did film it a couple of years ago, yes. That was mainly for our own purposes, and yes, we've got a copy of a tape of the Easter Fair from 2 years ago.
That's a good example of
one of the
television
things, that's right,
can do well.
Absolutely.
If the networks are not actually getting involved in that area, isn't it?
Well, see, Prime Television actually sponsors the Bendigo Easter Fair, but to the best of my knowledge, for a number of years it hasn't been shown live. Now, that's something that we could do. We could show it live, or we could show it later on, so that people, for instance, people in hospitals or nursing homes who can't go to the Bendigo Easter Fair, they could watch it on CTV 41 Bendigo.
And another thing is in promoting local talent. Like we have behind us here a bit of a clip that we've done from local country and western, which is local talent, and it could be promoted much more through a program generated in this area rather than just relying on big dollars in the city.
Welcome to Goldfields Country. I'm Anne Conway.
Are you a man I can trust, or just a man full of lust? It's so hard to tell, love is all so new. Will you treat me like a fool, or will you love me through and through? Baby, tell me now, before we go too far. 'Cause I don't need another heartache, I don't need another lie, I don't need someone to drag me down again. What I really need is a friend. When I look into your eyes, it's so hard to compromise. I feel I know you, but maybe you don't know me. Baby, try to understand that I will treat you like a man. So be sure the words you say are what you mean. 'Cause I don't need another heartache, I don't need another line, I don't need someone to drag me down again. What I really need is a friend. Someone to drag me down again. What I really need, what I really, really need, what I really need is a friend. What I really need is a friend.
We're Twist and Shout, and we'd like to say to all of you community-minded people out there to get behind BCTV, Channel 41. Let us put you in the picture.
The present situation regarding the apparatus licence, there are a number of different paths that Bendigo Community Television can go down. Could you lead us down those paths and just show us what the possible outcomes could be, or that you anticipate?
Yep. Well, see, the government's announced its decision in late December on the introduction of digital television as it affects the commercial television stations and the datacasters. It still has to make a number of other decisions, including what sort of digital television SBS and ABC will broadcast. It also has to make a final decision on how community television will be broadcast. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's our hope that community television will be able to simulcast both in analogue television and digital television. And the current decision, and I assume that this will be confirmed in late January 2000 by the government, that community television will be transmitted through a datacaster in standard definition television. Now, another decision the government has to make is whether or not in the digital era they will allow community television to be broadcast in regional areas. Now, effectively, community television has been in a trial for 5 years or so, and I guess what the trial has showed the government is that it's very difficult for community television in regional areas throughout Australia to be to sustain itself. The only other regional community television in Australia is in Lismore, New South Wales. They got on air, I think, in 1995. They were on air for a couple of years. At the moment, they've been off air for 2 years.
That's been primarily due to a lack of funding.
Lack of funding and problems with transmitters and transmitter sites. Now, we need help from the government here. And coming back to the question that you asked, if the government decided not to allow regional or community television in regional areas, we're not going to get our licence back. So the Australian Broadcasting Authority still hasn't made a decision on whether or not to return our licence, only because the government still hasn't handed down its decision on the future of community television in the digital era. Now, effectively, if we get our licence back, that's only the first step. We have to get back on air. We've got to get a transmitter. We've got to get back on air. We need people. We need money. We might be able to borrow the transmitter that we borrowed previously.
But we do need the money to put it back up again.
That's right. So even if we get our licence back, we need money to get back on air. And if we don't get that, we either go out of existence or we stay in existence as a program producer for the other community television stations, or we wait and reapply for a digital community television licence, which may or may not happen. So effectively that's our three options, I think.
So really we're very, very dependent upon the community to get behind us and the government to give us some assistance and backing. But mainly it's the community. If the community itself doesn't really get behind us, that's the people of the regional area in Bendigo and Central Victoria, and someone come forward and really with a bit of enthusiasm, which has been quite lacking in many areas. If they don't come on board, we just won't have a community licence in this area, or a community television card.
And one of the other problems I gather is that the pay TV, there is a rural pay TV which has been criticised for its high turnover of repeats, I gather. Obviously what you're doing here could actually fill a niche in there too, as a distinct choice from that, apart from what the networks are not doing here. So that's
I think that's right.
It's an interesting point to raise in there too. And I imagine that things might get even worse with when the networks actually go digital. The amount of production would decrease in a way because of costs to make programs. I imagine the news maybe it's only the only focus it will be going in.
The way I see it, we really need help to get on air to start with. We need grants to get the equipment, to get us on air and to set it up, and that just does not seem to be forthcoming anywhere along the line. Once again, we're just getting the community, under the previous government, everything was just taken out of the rural sector. I mean, banks and services and everything. And I think it's time that we start to get the community back into the rural sector.
Well, it seems to me that Bendigo Community Television needs as much support as the Bendigo community and the region can foster to encourage the Australian Broadcasting Authority to reverse its process.
Absolutely.
The previous decision. And in essence, it's over to the community to determine if and how much community television it wants.
Well, I think that's right. The bottom line.
Yes, it's their television program, or our television station, as the community station, so let the community get in and make it happen.
Well, it's time to thank our guests now. Russell Castley, Chairman of Bendigo Community Television. Wendy McKillop, Secretary of Bendigo Community Television, for sharing their thoughts on community television and Bendigo Community Television in particular. And I'd like to thank Northern Access Television and Channel 31 Melbourne for allowing us this opportunity to tell our story. Thank you.
When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now those days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind.